Hi, I'm Marek Dias, and welcome. So, I'm doing a quick review. I recently had just completed Nier Automata, and I have to say that it was an interesting game. Now, I love Platinum games. I love classics like Bayonetta, and even the original creator when they did Devil May Cry, and some of the other Platinum games that have been out that have been great. I have not played the original Nier, but it's not necessary for Nier Automata. But I did play through this. Now, Nier has this Automata has something very strange about it. It's very janky, and what I mean by janky is that last night when I beat it, I didn't think I was beating it. I thought I was just fighting a boss. And it was really strange because then I was like, game over credits. Okay. And then there was a B game, and the B game was really short too. And I was like, okay, why is this game so short and easy? Now, I was playing it on normal mode, which, whatever, to be fair. But I only died twice. And when you walk around, there are bodies. And there are bodies everywhere. And I'd go into places and I'd be like, oh, there's a ton of bodies, something big's coming up. And then I'd defeat it in, like, just a couple of hits. And I rarely got hit. I think I died twice in the entirety of the game. It was not very long or very hard. And it's very strange because in Bayonetta, I died quite a lot because, you know, I'd make a mistake. And they were very unlenient if you made a mistake. And I played it on hard. So with Nier Automata, the story is very strange because in the beginning it's very slow paced and very like developing to the world, and then you do 2 missions after that, and then it's the end. I mean, really, there's only like 5 missions, 6 missions that are story missions, and I spent a majority of my time doing all the fluff side missions. And the fluff side missions were way too repetitive, way too back and forth, way too look this up online for a wiki, because it's pointless to struggle with some of these, because sometimes the map doesn't show you what you have to do, or you have to wander around a place for half an hour, and I don't like that. Now, it had this kind of weird MMO feel to it, where you're just wandering around and enemies just respawn after like 10 minutes. So it made farming for things really quickly, and I got a bunch of weapon upgrades pretty quickly. And I like the world and things in it, but the game doesn't bother to explain it. It doesn't take any time to explain things. It doesn't take any time to really develop what's going on or your current position. It just kind of says, this is the facts, this is what's happening now, and this is what we do. And the characters are so flip-flop that it doesn't make any sense. They're like, I hate machines. Oh, but this machine's okay. Oh, we need this machine's help. And then they're like, all machines must die. And it's like, this back and forth doesn't make any sense kind of dialogue. And I don't know whether it's something lost in translation or otherwise. And, of course, this was recommended to me by a bunch of people who really, really liked it. And I get it. I mean, it's fun to play. It's just the story is just terrible. I mean, it's not interesting. And everything is a very predictable dialogue. Like, within the first minute of a mission, you already know how the rest of the mission is going to play out. It's not very insightful. And it's very strange that there's about 5, 6 areas in the entire game. And out of these 5 and 6 areas, 2 of them are passive. There's no enemies in them. I mean, one of them kind of does, but it's just really just a boss and then a side quest. So it's this kind of weird, like, well, why? And like, I was reading, I won't say I was reading. Someone outright said, like, oh, you should probably, it's pretty hard and you'll have to grind. But I blew right through it. And I'm not even talking the story missions, like even the side missions with Emil. Those were all really absurdly easy. And there's these gold robots that were like disturbingly easy. However, The gold robots were the only time I died because the game clearly, like, freaked out. So these big guys will grab you, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you can heal during it, but he slammed me, and I went to heal again, and then it slammed me again, and I died. So basically it was too much damage to take at once, which was kind of silly. It's like the game forced me to die. Essentially, because the guy will grab you, and you have a second to use items, and then he slams you to the ground, and it takes like 3/4 of your health. But then he grabbed me again, and the actual pickup, because I was down, and you can't get up, obviously, and the second I got up to use my items, he just grabbed me again, and the actual grab killed me, and then he slammed me again, and I was already dead. But it was just like, okay, sure, just like, give me no choice but to die, because I can't use items when I'm down. And the other time I died, I fought a boss early on in the game, and then I went to loop back around because that was the only path that I knew to get back to the place. So I went to take the path again, and it was filled with enemies that were like 3 times my level. And I was like, okay, what the hell? And then they pretty much instantaneously kicked my ass. I didn't even try to fight them. I was just trying to pass through. Later on, I found out that there isn't actually a pass through. So the map lies. There's actually a hidden side way that you have to go, and there's no logical reason for it to be there or anything. It's just annoying. So basically, they didn't show the path well enough, so I didn't understand that you were supposed to go the other way, not back through the area you had been through. But they make you go back and forth between places so often that it's confusing at first. Like, now that I've played through it, I understand, but when I first played through it, I was like, okay, what the heck? Because you keep throwing new set pieces at me, and I can't tell if that's a place I can go or not, because even the map isn't accurate. There's actually several places where you can leave the map. Like the desert, there's a whole section that's like blacked out, but you can walk right through it. So it's like, did you not think about that? And there's sections like underground that don't appear on the map at all, and there's no way to get a map for that area, which is like, seriously? And there's like, it's just in general, it's not, there's a lot of like weird bugs and issues with it, in regards to maps and navigation and giving paths for the player to follow. And it takes the atypical Dark Souls, you've died, now go find your body, and of course since they're robots it makes sense, but at the same time it's not really the greatest. It doesn't really, like, I mean, it doesn't really add much. You're just basically nerfed until you can go get your body. It's not like I died during a boss and was like, oh god, like Dark Souls, where I'm like, I have to get my souls before this boss murders me, and then hopefully try to murder the boss before it murders me. That this is a lot more cut and dry, and most of the time your body will be out of the danger zone. It'll be kind of like set. Like the 2 times I died, my body was nowhere near where I was, so I was like, ah, fuck it. But all in all, I mean, it's good, but there's a common trend with these type of games, these kind of like action open world games, where they, and pretty much this has gone from the early times of these kind of ones, like Prototype and some other, I'm trying to remember other ones that are like that. Assassin's Creed is one, but I barely play those. I hate them. That there's this kind of idea where you do a bunch of fetch quests in an area over and over and over again, or you go to a place, there's an ambush, you get the item, you go back, and there's this kind of thing over and over again. Like, I backtracked between the city and the desert probably like 30 plus times in all the quests, and it was just annoying. And there's no point to it. It's time wasters. There's a bunch of other random side things you could do, like there's racing, which was stupid and buggy as hell because you try to jump on the one thing and the geometry is wonky. So sometimes it throws you right to the ground and sometimes it lets you pass right over it. So it's like, it's a crapshoot whether it actually works. And the other one, you have like the biggest downfall, even if you're moving fast, is her animations when she climbs and stuff. That sometimes she'll climb really fast, sometimes she'll climb really slow, but there's no way to speed it up or make it go faster. It's silly because I think it's randomized, because I tried jumping onto like several things in a row and she kept changing every time I did it. So I get the feeling that they made 3 or 4 different animations, and 2 of the animations are slow and 2 of them are fast, so that you just get them randomly. But really, that climbing is all that really mattered in the end. So, stupid. Also, in the 6 missions, they don't provide enough for you to actually do anything. So basically, you have to grind for items and stuff like that. And it's really frustrating because they tell you, or like you're supposed to find an item and they give you an idea of where that item is. But even with increased drop rates, you may get a different item from an enemy than the one you're supposed to be getting. And it's really frustrating to deal with RNG as being the only reason why you can't pass a mission, or you're having a mission take longer than it really realistically should, even when it's a silly fetch quest where it's like, oh, I need 3 stripped screws. Can you go get them for me? Fuck you. But like a lot of them didn't make a lot of sense, and they didn't really create set pieces. They just used what was already there, and it was kind of lazy questing. I feel like it would have been better if you just made the game like Bayonetta, where you set pieces, and you have an area and you just cluster that area, because there's a lot going on screen, and there's like nonsensical like animals you can ride, which isn't even that good, because the even your character will stumble when you reach like a loading block for the next area. There's no actual loading, but your character gets stuck or stopped up. And if you ride an animal, a lot of times they get stuck and stopped up, or like won't go, or you'll just be like kicked off of them essentially. So it's like, and then you have to like find a new animal to ride in the next area because you just want to get through to finish the fetch quest, but it like won't let you do those things, or it's too high for the animal to jump, so you have to get off their back and then go, and then on the other side you get another thing to ride. And it's really repetitive in that. It would be better if they just cut that out and made you a little bit faster. Like, it doesn't seem that important. The other thing that really peeves me off, and I really hate when games do this a lot, is that there are weapons, and there's multiple weapons. But all the weapons behave exactly the same. The only difference really is their damage and range. So you do get extra hits on some of them, but they're always going to do the same combo, the same counter, the same like dodge retaliation move. So really it's kind of pointless. Why not just have one weapon and you have a branching tree of which way you want to upgrade it? It just feels like it's unnecessary inventory space. You also have your little pod floaty guys, and they're helpful and all, but I mean, truthfully, I barely use them. The only thing I really use them for later, other than shooting things down or destroying guys who self-destruct, is basically for a critical slash move, because all the other moves are virtually worthless and do almost no damage, even when the pod gets upgraded. So it's like, ugh. And the pod upgrades are absolutely messed up because they're items that you can't get regularly, or they're exceedingly rare to get. Like pure water, I had to farm the sewers for like an hour just to get one, and you need like 11. So things like that are relatively obnoxious, and they don't really add to the experience of the game. They actually make it a little bit worse. Now, enemy combat, the combat controls are really nice, really tight. Enemies give intonation when they're going to attack or to do something, which is nice. And it makes the combat interesting because you can actually go through the game without taking a hit. It's just not likely. It's also interspersed with weird space shooter parts that feel really at odds with the core gameplay. And there's like flying guys, and basically you need a skill that allows you to kind of shoot projectiles, even if you are using your pod to shoot down their projectiles. There's this very like obnoxious enemies will just like coat an area with fire and hope that it works, but you can just slash through them, so it's pointless. But these space shooter sequences are really like, I don't get them. Excuse me. I'm really dry from recording a lot of Shadowrun. So, just playing it, it's very off-putting to be like, okay, combat, like, this is some intense combat. It's Bayonetta-like combat, or like Devil May Cry, like very quick, fast-paced, and you get all excited for that, and then it switches to a generic space shooter, and it's a generic space shooter with a pretty background, and that's not really like I like space shooters that are space shooters, but I don't like space shooters stuffed into an action game. Plus there's this whole it's not a spoiler for it, but there's this whole hacking dynamic where you have to basically play like a short game of asteroids to try to prevent damage to your character or to do damage to other characters or to unlock chat, like all this stuff. And it's just pointless. I mean, it really is pointless. Like, if you just use it as a side ability where you don't actually influence the chance, like the chance is influenced by your chips or something, that would make sense. That would be great. That would be wonderful. But I feel like the hacking is something that's just thrown in. And it's another space shooter. Like, if you want to make a space shooter game, just make a space shooter game. If you want to have characters, background, and story, or like mecha combat with it, that's fine. Those all kind of go together. But throwing her into these things and throwing your characters into these space shooter segments feels really disjointed. In the beginning, I understand it as like an epic. You're starting the game, like that's how you get down there. But there was no reason to ever have it again. There's no reason whatsoever. It dilutes the core gameplay to the point where if you are really good at action games but suck at space shooters, you're going to have trouble with bosses because they suddenly throw the type away from you. If you're really good at space shooters but really bad at combat, you may never even get to those points. You may enjoy the space shooter portion because it is good. It's just not what you want in an action game like that. Like it sets a pace in the beginning, but then that pace just drops off to a dead stop, and then you pick it up randomly later, and it feels really disjointed. And they make a lot of opinions and points about how that's not going to happen again, and then it does happen again, and then you feel like, why was that necessary? My other biggest gripe of it is that when you pick up bodies, other people's dead bodies show up near you. I actually checked it, and it seems like only 1 out of like 3 or 4 of them, especially when you pick up multiples, will actually give you items. Because I picked up one with an item that I wanted, and I said, okay, well, I can merge these chips and create a badass chip. Where was it? Nowhere. I even looked in my inventory after I checked it, and it wasn't in there. So there's all sorts of issues with pickups. I also checked my items and went to pick up an item that I knew was one of the items I needed to farm, picked it up, and looked, and my number hadn't changed for the item. And I wasn't at 99. I was only at like 9, but I needed like 10 for an upgrade or something dumb. But it didn't pick it up. And I was really pissed off. I was like, what the hell? Like, I spent all this time trying to finally get this damn item, and now I can't get this item. So, it's just frustrating to play a game like that, especially when you're reliant so heavily on RNG, and then even the basic concept of picking up an item isn't correct. And as for the exploration portion of the game changes really quickly, and there's really not a lot of area to tread. Truthfully, you could probably run the entirety of the map in like maybe 15 minutes. You could run basically in a giant loop because all the maps are connected. In about 15, probably 20 minutes at most. But with speed ups, probably 15 minutes. And it's a problem that it's really small. They try to make this big epic world, but everything is too close together. Everything is too compacted. The story is too compact. Basically, it's a it's a small game that they just added extra characters to try to spice it up. And it doesn't spice it up because you're still playing in the same tiny dead world. So it's not very fun in that regard, in regards to the story or like the added space shooter segments and all this stuff. But like the core combat is great. It's just there's not enough of it. And even when you get to like the hardest parts, there are enemies that like are supposed to really challenge you, like Emil and the dojo. Neither of them are challenging at all. If you had problems with it, you're not very good at these type of games, and you should probably stop. But overall, I'm glad I got this for not very much. Truthfully, even though some of it looked pretty and there's some interesting characters and interactions and stuff, it's not worth $60. That flatly. It's essentially a budget buy $19 or $29 game that they wrote expansions for and DLC for some reason, and then kind of slapped it together and said this is a whole game. But you can't tape, 3 different chocolate bars together and be like, this is a whole bar of chocolate. Like, no, it's 3 different bars of chocolate. You've just put them all in the same world. And I don't know, it feels really disjointed. Now the music is top notch, the sounds are good, the combat is good. So pretty much if you're looking very superficially, it's wonderful. It looks nice, it plays nice, all of that. But if you're expecting like a good story, or you're expecting something more out of it, there really isn't a lot to it. And the worst part is it doesn't seem like any of the characters are particularly affected by it. They shoehorn in a lot of weird things that don't make sense. Like, oh, I'm cold and I don't show emotion. And at the end, then I don't mean at the end of the game, I just mean in general, at the end of every conversation, she's like, oh, I don't know if I feel this way. And or they're like, oh, this poor robot's lost their family member. We should go find it. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter because robots don't have families. They're nobodies and they should all die. And you're like, didn't we just agree to go help this robot? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, and this kind of thing happens all the time in the game. And it makes me feel like the characters are written at different points in history all at the same time. Like, we accepted this mission after we'd already learned our lesson that friendship is vital. And then it's like, but once we're done that conversation, it's back to when we first landed on this place, and we are ready to kill some robots. And this kind of behavior really is way too consistent in this game that it makes me think that every robot has a severe case of bipolar. There's a character in it who's a robot who is the most consistent, like, common character who continuously does her, I don't know if they're even gendered, if the character is even gendered, and they continue their idea and the way they are throughout the entire game, and they stay as a consistent character, and the character, their entire story just ends. There's no finality. It's just, oh, I'm busy, I have other things to do, bye. And it's the only like really well developed character. And there's like other things in there where like the game tries to take itself really seriously, then has like these jokes in it that don't make any sense, and they try really hard to do this kind of Metal Gear Solid like, calling comm system, and then they try to be like jokey and like, are you on point with your mission? And then like, but I want to see some flowers. And it's like they make all this big deal that these robots aren't supposed to show emotion or do anything big, strong, and powerful and all this nonsense. And then half of them are crying or talking about, oh, I wish I could do this. And it's like, why? Like, why is this a thing? Like, why would this even be programmed into them? It doesn't even make any sense. And the entire story just basically revolves around 2 selfish robots that are completely and totally bipolar, androids, and they go up against other robots that are more feeling and deeper characters than they are, with wider arcs, and truthfully, it feels like a non-game. Like, there's game elements, but they cashed in on the story and said that's it. And I'm bashing the story hard because it is really, really bad. Like, there's no finality, there's no good in the story, and they say, like, oh, you've completed Route A, oh, you've completed Route B, and it's like, they were the same thing. Like, there's nothing new happening here. You're just doing the same thing over again with from the perspective of a different character. That's not interesting. This isn't Resident Evil on PlayStation 1. This is a PlayStation 4 or PC or whatever the hell you bought it on. Like, I think that they had an idea, they didn't know how to execute it, and they just lazed out and said, here's another Square Enix game dumped out. And for Platinum, that's weird, because Platinum took a lot of time making really solid games, and it feels like this one was just like a rush throwout. And they really should have worked more on that kind of stuff. Like, I'm okay if you want to take a serious tone and you have one or two missions that are like lighthearted, but there's like, or funny, but these ones, they're non sequitur why they're in there and funny. Like, and it's really strange because the characters like jump from this like, oh, there's no choice but war, and then there's not war. Like, it's just so bipolar, and it's fucking weird, and I don't really like it. And it wasn't amusing or like something that endeared me to the characters or made me, oh, that's so sweet. No, it just annoyed me more than anything. So truth be told, if you like a quick action game and don't want any of the story, it's a solid game. Don't expect a lot of miracles. And if you're a really big fan of Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, you'll like the combat. But unlike Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, which some of the Devil May Cries did not have the greatest story, and Bayonetta's admittedly was a little weak, but this doesn't have the showmanship and flair that those games had. This one is a very bleak, everything is black and white, and they even pound you over the head with that, and then the characters say, like, oh, there's a gray area, black to black and white, that this game suffers from a severe complex of it, and it really, really, really hurts the game. I would have to say, like, if I were going to give it, like, out of, just say, let's just throw out 50. 50 is a good number to kind of get an idea. I'd say the combat is really, really high, although it does get stale because you do the same things over and over again. There's no change or development to your combat. It's pretty much press 3 buttons to make things die, and then dodge their attacks or jump up to try to hit them. So, I mean, the combat is solid and tight, but repetitive. So I would only give that like a 35-40%, or 35 or 40. The story is like a 5. It's not even that appealing or interesting. Character-wise, the main characters, that's like probably like a 10 or a 15. They shoehorn in, spoiler alert, a love story that doesn't make any sense with androids. They don't explain why these androids even love each other. They don't even seem to have a relationship that equals love, and they make this thing at the end like it's happened before, and it doesn't make any sense, unless it's some callback to Nier that I don't understand. But it really is awful, and is just really cheesy and stupid. It doesn't make any sense. The general aesthetics and everything around the game is really good. It's in a fancy package. But, again, fancy packages are nice when you can do a lot with it. It feels like the world wasn't dynamic at all. And it was small, like really small. So there was a lot of just like dead walking areas with nothing in it. So, I mean, really I'd give that like a 30 at most. It's halfway there. It's almost to a fully developed world. But all in all, I'd probably give this game probably like 30 out of 50. I mean, I think that the massive shortcomings of the story, of the very dead world, very old, like 2003 MMO, big dead world with a few enemies to fight, doesn't really work real well anymore. There was not a lot of, like, everything was very linear. There was not a lot of, like, side exploration stuff. Most of that was very minimal. Everything else was eh. I mean, the combat and the music and Pascal, that's really, like, the take-home of this game. But either way, if you like it, that's your business. Either way, if you like this review or otherwise, go check out my Patreon, follow me on Twitter, or like and subscribe. If you don't like it, go eat a bag of pristine screws. But that's all for my review of Let's Play Nier Automata, which I didn't Let's Play and I'm never going to, because I'm not going to subject you to that. See you later.